Good afternoon, everyone. So it's my great pleasure to be here today to share my works with you. Right now, I'm a postdoc with. Sorry.
Try to stick closer to the laptop here.
Yeah. Right now, I'm doing postdoc with Dr. Ben Walker in biomedia. And so today, I'm going to talk about our very recent works about model adaptation and integration. So, right now, deep neural network has made lots of success in the area of medical imaging and computer vision, but most of the assumption is that all the data are very well aligned. On the one hand, all the training data come from the same data set, and meanwhile, some of the testing data and the training data come from the same domain, so they are very well aligned in the training and inference scenario. So how about we think the situation in a more complicated or in a more challenging scenario, like the training and testing are from different distributions, so they are from kind of very severe domain shift. I think for this situation, we have basically two different scenarios. The first one, we can consider how to adapt the model. So the scenario is we first train the model on the database that is trained from one domain, but we test the model directly on the other. So for this scenario, we call it about domain adaptation. And the other one is we think about how we can integrate. So see, we have data sets that are from different domains or different distributions, how we can build one single model that can work perfectly for both different multi-sources of images. So in this presentation, I will talk about three different concrete techniques that solve these two kind of scenarios. Well, the first stream I will talk about like how we do the unsupervised domain adaptation to adapt models that are trained on CT, trained on MRI and adapted to CT data and vice versa. So as we know that in the medical area, that those low-level features, they have very significant domain distribution shift. So intuitively, they look very different to us with different intensity distributions and different appearances. And on the other hand, meanwhile, I think those images are in a high level, they are very well highly aligned. So their structure levels are actually the same because they are from the same anatomic structures from our human body. So based on this assumption that we are proposing like a kind of plug and play architecture to align those features from those low-level levels and then retain or share those high-level representations in a way that can be used in adaptation process. Like in the very beginning, we need to first train the model on the source domain. So we generally train the model with across entropy loss and depth loss together so that it can normally do a segmentation task. And then our next work is to adapt such kind of source domain model to make it also work in an unseen target domain without any labels from the target domain. So this is called so-called unsupervised domain adaptation. So to make this, we have two different parts in the whole network. So one is, we call this as kind of domain adaptation modular. It aims to map the input data distribution from target domain to the existing shared latent space of the source domain. And so that in this way, as we already mapped the different input distributions into a shared latent space, so that those classifiers that already established in this latent space can be reused to classify or to analyze the target data. And to train this in an unsupervised way, we need to add another domain discriminator here. Its role is to differentiate between the features or the representations from which domain. So the whole network, you can see they have three parts. The first part is a generate segmentation model from the source domain. The second part is adaptation module, and the third part is a discriminator module. So they train together, and when those discriminators cannot tell which feature come from which domain, we can see we get a homogeneous latent space. So that in this way, the classifier can work well for both images from different domains. And so there are different design of the discriminator. We later on tried to change the one discriminator into two parts. The first one is input is high dimensional latent representation, so it's high dimensional feature maps. And the other one is more compact way, so it's input other segmentation logics after the softmax layer, so that it can be more like focused on the structure, the semantic structure of the substructures in the anatomy. So but the training process is the same. We just train 2 discriminators rather than 1. And for the data side, we tried a multimodal segmentation from CT and MRI from unpaired patients. So each modality have 20 patients. And this is a multi-class segmentation task come for different substructures. So fun results look like this. As we see, the first column is a CT image, which is the target domain, and the second column is a label. So if we train on CT and test on CT, we can always get very good results, and we can get. But if we can directly test the model trained on MR image, but test on CT, we can get a complete failure due to the severe appearance shift. And here are different comparison results. They also align the latent feature space, but in a different way. And the last column is our results. And in the meanwhile, we also found that based on image-to-image translation, so that kind of cyclogram framework can also work for this kind of domain adaptation scenario. And you can see here, we can first transform the MR image into a stylized CT image, and then transform the CT with the original label from MR image, so that we can train the model that can work on CT. And in other ways, also the same. We can style the CT in a way of MRI and then train it. So the next way we are thinking is to combine these 2 things together. On the one hand, we transform the appearance of images. And in meanwhile, we also align those latent feature spaces. So with this concept, we propose a kind of we call it synergistic fusion of adaptation from both image and feature levels. So the whole framework looks like kind of complicated as break down it into different parts, so then we can handle it more clearly. So one part is that we build a kind of generator from source domain to target domain. Say we use a generator to transform the MR image into CT style, and here's a discriminator to differentiate which is the real CT and which is the false CT. And meanwhile, on the other way around, we also build another discriminator and a pair of discriminator and generator to transform the image of CT to CT stylized MRI and also compare it with the real MRI. So here we form a kind of cycle consistency. And here's another cycle consistency from CT and MRI, but we cannot plot it very clearly in the same figure, but it's a kind of whole cyclogram framework in two-way of transformation between CT and MRI. And in the meanwhile, for the synergistic part, it looks like this. So we also already transformed the MRI into stylized and CT, and then it go into a shared kind of feature extractors, go to the classifier for the classification task. And then, so this stream, you can see the blue stream is supervised with the original conventional segmentation loss. So, and in the meanwhile, the unlabeled CT can also input the whole segmentation framework, and it can also output the prediction of the CT. So here's another discriminator. It's similar to the previous work. We compared the predictions from MRI to CT in a latent compact latent space for the discriminator to check if it's thematically correct for the classification and for the segmentation. So in a way, I think intuitively the whole concept or the main idea of such kind of framework is to make this part of feature encoder, it simultaneously serves as 2 different functions. The first part is it serves as part of the cycle consistency in the transformation or the generator from target domain to the source domain. And on the other hand, meanwhile, it also serves as the feature extractors towards a classifier, so that it extracts domain invariant features, but in this way it extracts domain invariant features between the real CT and the false CT. So they are more aligned way in the input, so that the domain shift between these 2 parts are more narrowed in the way. So in the inference, it's very straightforward. We have target CT and then we input to the classifier and get the prediction result. And here are the numbers. So we evaluate on the same task with numbers of dice and average surface distance. So the first row is we do nothing. We just directly test the model, test the segmentation model that is trained on MRI, but test on CT, you can get a complete figure on these things. And if we do like this one is then the first walk, do the alignment in the feature space, it can recover the performance to a certain degree. And finally, with using two different parts together in a whole framework, it can recover the segmentation performance to a large extent. And here are some comparison results. So this is a cyclogram means we first change or transform the image between domains and then train the model generally. And this one it's called Cicada, so it's published in SML last year. So it also shares the concept of using together the image level and feature level adaptation together, but they are doing that in a sequential way. So it means they first transform the image and then do the alignment in the latent feature space, not train them together in a joint way. But it can still get very, very good results for this task. So here are some concrete examples of the segmentation results. You can see Cicada works quite well and all works even better. And so, but there's still a long way to go, I think, before we can fully unsupervised and adapt to the model, train on one modality to the other and vice versa. So next, let's go on the second part. So how about we do this, kind of stepwise manner? See, we have a set of CT and we also have a set of MRI, and we are doing the same task to segment the same pair of structures, but in a single model. So normally, people do the multimodal learning in a kind of framework. They call it early or late fusion. See, the so-called early fusion is they concatenate different modalities into different channels and input the model together as different input channels and train the model as usual. And for the late fusion, it means that we build a network structure in a way that different, so this is the so-called late fusion, different sources of data have different separate early layers, and then they fuse their features in the middle of the network and then go down to the classification task. So, and here is a quite recent work also from our group that we work on exactly the same setting of sharing the features between CT and MRI to do the model integration. So we experimentally found that we share the middle layers and we separate early and later layers can give us the best performance for the multimodal learning in an integrated framework. But I think in the meanwhile, we are very clear that the neural networks have remarkable model capacities and lots of parameters to model the representation and ask us to make do the analysis tasks. But I think for this kind of large model capacity, especially in our medical domain, we have a scarcity of data set, have largely unexplored how to make best use of it given the limited data set. So in a way, we are thinking to we would like to propose a kind of more parameter efficient way. So we use less parameter possible to explore or to make use of the large capacity of the model as much as possible. So we are thinking that given different source of data that have different data distributions, so so what's the reason behind that we can't get good results if we train that directly? So in a way, it means that the parameters or the features internal of the network are not very well aligned, I think. So before we use neural network to analyze the images or to do the analysis tasks, we previously we used the feature extractor like the SIFT, like the HOG. All the feature extraction part are all shared. We use the same kind of feature extraction method and they use different classifiers. But in the network way, we just learn it, just start to learn the features in a neural network. So I think the neural network, the feature extractors are the so-called kernels or the so-called convolutional layers. So in a way, I think we can use some science to also share all those kind of feature extractors in the network. But in the meanwhile, in a way we are learning it, so we need to carefully normalize internal distribution shifts that are input to the whole stream of the feature extraction process. So this is the underlying concept, and practically we do this in a very straightforward way. We use different batch normalization or group normalization, whatever normalization layers that we are available to use for each different modality with sharing all the convolutional kernels. So this idea is not crazy, and there are an early paper 2 years ago from computer vision community. They even experimented that sharing all the layers, even including the last classification layer, can make the model do multiple different tasks together very reasonably. So it's very sensible for us to share all the things together, but with very careful minimization of like parameter amount to do that task. So, but training such a kind of compact model is not straightforward. We need to like carefully normalize internal features, but meanwhile also need to give different regularizations or different loss functions to get the learning of the network. So basically, I think this idea is more, but it's sweet. The concept is that we assume the samples from the same class, so their distribution, their probability distribution across all the classes should be similar. So intuitively, we think that if one thing in a domain, it looks like the other. So if one class in one domain looks like the other, then it's highly likely in the other domain, they also follow such kind of distribution, right? So for example, if in the CT, the left kidney looks like the right kidney, it's also likely that in MRI, the left kidney will also look like the right kidney. So in a way, we disentangle all the activations in one domain from one particular class and form its kind of posterior distribution across all the classes. So we, in a way, for each of class, we can get a distribution, a kind of vector, how the particular class can distribute over all the classes. So it's in a way get one vector for one class. And in a way, for all the classes, we get a configuration matrix. And it's the same thing for the other domain, we get another configuration matrix. And what we are wanting to do that we use one single model to learn the classification task, and such kind of configuration matrix from different source of images will be aligned so that the model can learn a concept in a semantic way how to do the task. So from technical part or from implementation part, here we aggregate all the pixels from one particular class of their activations before the softmax layer. And then we get a vector, which is for the channel, and this is for the number of class. So we use a temperature to scale down the activity so that we can amplify the distribution over the classes. And then we compute or minimize the KR divergence between the two configuration matrix and add it together and the extra loss function together with the cross-entropy loss or death loss, treating them together normally. So here is how is the performance over the same task for multi-class cardiac segmentation. So the first line is an individual model. We train a particular model for a particular domain. And the second one is we train them together naively in a single model. So they work reasonably well actually from experiment. And the last column is our results. And these two are the comparison results with how we normally do the multi-model learning with different modality have different separate layers. And we have done a new interesting settings. We directly add such kind of KL divergence minimization loss function to the model that we joint model that we share everything together, so that in this way, even though we don't separate the batch normalization layer, it can still work reasonably well to improve the generalization capability of the joint model given different source of input models. And such a kind of mechanism is quite flexible, and so it can be readily integrated into any different existing networks. So this one is we add it into the 3D UNet and train the 3D model for multi-organ segmentation. It can even work better over the more significantly better over the joint model. So it can, in a way, to reflect that training different sources of images with a 3D model is even harder. And so then in this way, we do more things here can bring us more significant improvement. And for the parameter scale, we can see that just improve a very little bit amount of parameters over the joint model, because each layer only has a number of channels more parameters, if you're familiar with normalization layers. So this is quite a compact model, and but in the meanwhile, it can give us very good results. So here are some examples of the different methods produce different segmentation results. And that work we submitted this to MICHI this year. And if you want to know more, we can discuss afterwards, and I can send the manuscript to you if you're interested. So I welcome for any questions and discussions. Thank you.